I got to start out this video by saying thank you to every one of you out there for making this video possible for number 50. I can't believe I'm saying it's number 50. I mean, wow. I set out to make 8, possibly 10 videos. A good friend of mine at work, who I work with, was telling me that I should do this, and I'm like, nah, man, I'm not a video guy, and who am I? And no one's gonna watch this shit. And lo and behold, you guys are watching this shit. So thank you very much, all you guys. You guys have been awesome. The unbelievable number 50. So what do you do for number 50, right? So I started thinking, it's got to be something big. I actually made it too big. I pulled too much stuff, so I had to cut it back, and this would have been a 9-hour video. We're going to take a look at every territory, company, whatever you want to call it, from across the U.S., over the oceans, and back again. Just every champion that was out there. We're going to look at some of the rarer champions, though. Everybody knows the Ric Flair is the 10 pounds of gold, and the Bruno Sammartino, the Winged Eagle champion belt. There's a lot of other belts and titles and championships out there that really never got much attention paid to. Sometimes they were just in a small picture in the corner. People easily overlook those photos and just look at the main shot on the magazine. So we're going to dig in deep and take a look at some of the not lesser known wrestlers, but some of the lesser known championships throughout the NWA, AWA, WWF, and across the other side of the world. Championship belts as we go along. So let's dive right into it. Here are August 1981, the fabulous Freebirds, and this is their very first championship belts, and it is the National Heavyweight Championship Tag Team belts, and these are the first tag team champions. Started off in the Georgia Crockett area, and these are, you don't see very many magazines with the Freebirds as the champions. Actually, this is the only one that I could find, and I looked real good. If I'm missing something, I don't think I am. This is the only magazine cover that has the Freebirds on the title, on the cover with the title. Only thing, I don't think Buddy Roberts was the champion. I think they made like the Freebird rule. Any one of the three can defend the title, even though Gordy and Hayes were the actual winners when they won the belts. But they have the strap on Buddy Roberts, but these two were the ones that actually won that. That same belt, the National Tag Team Champions, gained popularity when the Road Warriors were the champions, and this is the Road Warriors' first championship belt. Actually, they never won the belts. The Freebirds lost the titles to the Wild Samoans, and the Samoans forfeited the titles and left for the WWF. And the title sat vacant for the better part of 10 months or so, and then out come these two wild maniacs, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, with the National Tag Team belts. They never even actually won the belts. They were given to them. So their very first match together on TV, and they're already the champions. Kind of set the path for them, because they were the champions everywhere they went. The last and final National Tag Team champions were the Anderson brothers. That is Ole and Arn Anderson. You can see the belt style changed quite a bit. Kind of looks like the 10 pounds of gold, but in silver form. And this is December 1985. These magazines that we're going through today, I also have programs, as well as I yanked a bunch out of my 8x10s. A lot of them are going to be signed. Because I usually buy, if I buy an 8x10, it's usually with a champion on the cover, on the photo. I don't usually buy 8x10s unless there's a champion. That particular belt may not have been featured on a cover of a magazine, so I'd have to pull it from a photo just so I can talk about the wrestler and talk about that actual championship belt. Here is another look at the Freebirds, but this time they're in the UWF, Universal Wrestling Federation, and Terry Gordy is the UWF Heavyweight Champion, and Buddy Roberts is the TV Champion. And this is a rare magazine from December 1986, and they only made 2 of these. Actually, I'm trying to think now. They only made 1 of these, and then it switched. I'll show you the issue number 2, which is in the same family, but they just changed the name of it. I'll explain to you when I get there. With gentleman Chris Adams is on the cover of that one. This is the only look at Freebird with the UWF belt on a cover of a magazine. Who else held it? Steve Williams is on one magazine with it, and Bubba Rogers was not on the cover. This is the NWA Digest program / magazine. What it was they came out with a magazine called NWA Pro Wrestling Digest. This is issue number 1. Issue number 1 was sold at the arenas as a program for the Bunkhouse Stampede. So when you bought the program, this was also the issue number 1 to the magazine. Any other magazines from the NWA Pro Digest were mail-in, and you got a subscription to it. So this is considered, on the bottom it says NWA Official Magazine / Program. The other issues don't say program on them, and it came with a lineup sheet. This is a lineup sheet from the Philly Civic Center for a 20-man bunkhouse, and Ric Flair defended the title for the first time against Sting in '87, which is an early run with Sting for that belt, and Dusty Rhodes defended the U.S. title against Tully Blanchard. Here's just a better shot of Dr. Death on the cover with the UWF belt. The UWF merged with the NWA Crockett, and the company left. UWF was, Mid-South before, and it was a fantastic company. It was a fantastic wrestlers came out of there. Deeply miss Mid-South and the UWF. The Doc is on another magazine cover. This one just popped out a lot better, so I decided to show the 8x10 instead. Here's not a new wrestler. Greg Valentine obviously is not anyone who's not familiar with Greg Valentine. Everybody is, but a lot of people may not have known that he was the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion, another belt that came out of the Crockett territory. He's on the cover of September '79 of Wrestling Yearbook. I met Greg a bunch of times. Actually, it's funny, he would come to, I'm a big horror movie fan, as most of you guys know, and he would come to the horror conventions. Once in a while, they would get a wrestler or 2 pop up on the shows, and he was always sitting there, and I would always go up and see him and get shit signed from him. He's always been pretty cool. So I have a ton of stuff here signed by Greg. I just pulled a few things out to show you. Here is the iconic shirt when he broke Wahoo McDaniel's leg. He also broke Chief Jay Strombo's leg in the WWF. They kind of pulled the same angle, but here he is with the Mid-Atlantic belt and the shirt. I broke Wahoo's leg. It's funny, he would do the same thing, I believe 2012. Here is the old photo that I had signed, and here is a new photo of him making an independent show down in the Carolinas with a replicated belt of the I wish I had the date on it. I don't want to tell you the wrong date. I think it was 2012. Him with the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship belt, and that's also signed by Greg. Here he is when he was the WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, and he held so many different belts over the years. Even when he was going as one of the Fargos, he was the tag team champion. Here's Greg on the cover with the WWF belt. Anyone who's seen that match knows the controversy that it caused. They both had blonde hair. They both had black trunks. Backlund pinned Valentine, and the referee raised Valentine's hand and gave him the belt. So there was a lot of confusion going on, and so the title was held up for a following month. Pretty cool angle, different way to draw some people in to try to fill up the arena. It worked kind of well. Great matches with Valentine, Backlund, some classic shots together. Here is the magnificent Morocco, and this is the one and only magazine cover that he was on as the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of May of 1983. Like I said, we're in no particular order. We're going to be in the 80s. All of a sudden, we're going to drop down to the 50s, and then, we'll be back up to the 90s. So I just don't have these in any kind of order. We're just kind of going through this randomly. Here is Lex Luger in his rookie year of 1986 when he was the Florida Southern Heavyweight Champion. He beat, I believe it was Wahoo McDaniel for that title. Here is his first belt cover as a young Lex Luger. Here he is on the cover of a Grapevine program from Florida in 1986. Here is your look at your very first sanctioned World Heavyweight Champion, NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Orville Brown. Orville Brown was the first NWA World Champion. He was injured in a car wreck and could no longer wrestle. I'm not sure if he was crippled. I'm not sure what happened with it, but this is the only shot of Orville on a magazine. This is a magazine / program. The magazines didn't start yet. This is February of 1949. The magazines didn't start till 51. And this is just a Midwest souvenir program, most likely sold at the arena. And this is your only look at the world champion, the very first world champion for the NWA. Very rare, very expensive, very hard to find shot of Orville Brown on the cover. Here is Lou Thesz, who would become the most popular NWA heavyweight champion throughout the 50s and the 60s. This is his first magazine cover showing off the gold belt. You can see how small the belt is at that time period. It was even smaller than Orville's belt, and his belt was pretty small. They actually even went smaller than that. And so September 22nd, 1951, Wrestling As You Like It. You know how I feel about As You Like It and Wrestling Life. I didn't feel that they were a magazine with any substance, but nevertheless, you know, it's a magazine. And your first shot of your world champion, Lou Thesz. He would later become in color. That's a different photo, but in color in the 60s. Not until then you would see Lou in black and white till that point. This is your first look at the NWA United States Heavyweight Champion. That's Vern Gagne, and this is in 1954. This is a July issue of 1954. And like I said, so there was basically, it was the World Champion, there was the United States Champion, and then there was the World Tag Team Champions. Usually would go by United States Tag Team Champions. Every territory in the NWA was allowed to have their own United States champion as their main champion for that territory. So when the world champion came to town, say like he came to Florida, he would wrestle the Florida's United States champion. Or if he would, go out to Texas, he would fight Texas's U.S. heavyweight champion. That was their number one guy. That was the guy they wanted to feature in their territory, and the champion would most likely go to that territory and wrestle that U.S. champion. Excuse me. So there was a lot of U.S. champions. Every territory pretty much had a U.S. champion and a U.S. Tag team champion. Vern Gagne being the very first. This lineage to Vern Gagne's started in Chicago. It was later moved to Detroit when the Sheik bought the territory in the 60s. That continued the lineage with the Sheik's U.S. belt all the way up until when the Sheik ended in 1980 in Detroit. But that same lineage all the way up until 1980 was followed by this issue in 1954 being the first champ as Vern. Here's a look at your first World Tag Team Champions, and that's the Graham brothers. And this is on an issue, the very first issue of Wrestling Review in 1959. Notice how they're going by United States Heavyweight Tag Team Champions. Again, they didn't go by World Tag Team Champions. It's just the World Champion was the singles, and everything else was considered the U.S. until later on in the 70s when the Crockett territory adopted the World Champion, Tag Team Champion name. I believe the first World Tag Team Champion status name were the Anderson brothers. This is just a huge calendar from 1954, and it's got the World Heavyweight belt on it, and it's got different pictures of different wrestlers in there at that time. Lou with the belt, the Tag Team Champions with the belt, Vern Gagne with the belt. It's just a rare shot, a rare calendar, and this is the back calendar, and they're showing some wrestling holds, full Nelson, they're showing how to mount, showing the chicken wing arm bar, the standing chicken wing, and an abdominal stretch, which could turn into a hip throw, all legitimate actual moves. Here is your first and only look at Pat O'Connor as the NWA World Champion with the crown jewel. He was not on any magazines with the championship belt. He was on this only issue of Wrestling News. That same belt now around the waist of Gene Kiniski. This is Gene's only full magazine cover with him as the world champion. It's on a cover of Gong in December of 1970. Great shot there. Here is a shot of the next champion, Dory Funk. Dory Funk would lose the title to Harley Race. Everybody has seen Dory with this belt. Not many people have got to see Harley Race with that belt. Harley is pretty much known with the 10 pounds of gold, and here's an early shot during his first run as NWA champion in '73 when he beat Dory Funk for the belt. Before the belt would turn to the 10 pounds of gold with a black leather, Harley was presented the new style belt, and that was the red velvet 10 pounds of gold. And here he is posing in the ring. This is actually the night that he lost the belt. He was given the belt in the ring. He handed in the crown jewel belt. They handed him this. He posed for this picture, handed it back in, and lost the title to Jack Briscoe that same night. So this is your only picture of him in the ring with that belt. He never had it in the locker room. He just had it for about 4 photos that were taken in the ring and then handed back in. Before Harley was the world champion, he was the Central States heavyweight champion. Here's a rare shot of him in March of 1973 with the Central States heavyweight championship belt. Try to get you a better look at that. It's just inscribed, just a plain Jane territory belt. He kind of wore and defended around the St. Louis area. A lot of people don't know Harley Race was the AWA World Tag Team Champion, and his partner was Larry the Axe Hennig. And here he is on the cover with the AWA World Tag Team Championship belts on Wrestling Review, December 1967. And then finally, another rare shot of Harley on a cover of Gong. It's kind of a small picture. Magazines changed to smaller pictures years later, which I always hated, the small little pictures, but it's the only shot of Harley on a magazine cover with the All Japan Heavyweight Championship belt, the PWF Heavyweight Champion, after beating the giant Baba for that belt. Here's a rare shot of superstar Billy Graham, another small picture, and you can see it would be easily overlooked. I'll try to get that in because the glare doesn't screw it up. This is when Superstar was the Texas Brass Knuckles Heavyweight Champion in 1975. It's the only time you'll see Superstar in any magazine with that belt. A really rare shot. He didn't hold the belt for very long, but it's a classic look. It's a classic magazine, wrestling picture book from winter 1975, and this is the sports review series of the magazine. Superstar would lose that belt to Jose Lothario, and here is Jose holding the Brass Knucks belt. Another small picture. He's also holding 2 other belts, the Texas Heavyweight Championship and the Mexican title all together. Jose never really got as much publicity and fame as he should have. He's known for training Shawn Michaels, big deal. The guy was much more than that. He was a great wrestler, beloved by tons. He was huge in Texas. 1975, you got your first look at Wildfire Tommy Rich with Tojo Yamamoto, and they are the Mid-America United States Tag Team Champions, pretty much basically in the Memphis area, Arkansas, Alabama, New Orleans, and this is your first look at Tommy Rich. This is also a hard issue to find. It's an NWA East edition, still being sold as an arena magazine at the time, and it's November 75's issue, and Tommy Rich and Tojo as the champs. In that same area territory, we have our first look at Jerry the King Lawler with the Memphis title. He is not on any other magazine with that Memphis title. I searched high and low and just could not believe that I couldn't find a picture with Jerry Lawler as the champion. He held that championship more than anyone else. and he's on nothing. He had hardly any coverage whatsoever. It's a shame that Memphis didn't get the credit it deserved. What a hell of a town! You must have been, so lucky if you grew up in that territory and watched all the greats come through there, and all the wild, crazy matches. That's the birthplace of hardcore, the birthplace of extreme wrestling, came out of Memphis. And if you get a chance to get any old videos on that, I'm sure you can watch some on YouTube. Check them out. It's great wrestling. It's I just can't say enough about it. I mean, it's very cheap, low budget, poorly done, poorly lit, but it's small, it's raw, it's real, and it was in your face. And they had some great matches down there. The Fargos, Lawler, Dundee, Austin Idol. The list goes on. There's some greats down there. Here is your one and only look at Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura when they were AWA Tag Team Champions. Both guys, in my opinion, should have held a lot more belts than they did. Adrian would hold the WWF Championship as well with Dick Murdoch, but Jesse never held many titles whatsoever. Here's a 8x10 signed by Ricky Steamboat, mid-70s, late 70s, when he was the NWA Mid-Atlantic Television Champion. What an awesome photo this is. This is in one of the Mid-Atlantic magazines as well, this photo. I'm pretty sure where this 8x10 head came from. Him in Hawaii with the surfboard, with the tan, the dark skin, the hair, built like a Greek god. What an awesome photo of Ricky Steamboat here. We're going to take a look at Steamboat and a few other photos and other championship belts as well. Here he was with his rival and also tag team partner. They were tag team champions. They were NWA Mid-Atlantic Crockett area tag team champions with the powder blue, very rare style belt for the Mid-Atlantic belts when they were tag team champions. Steamboat would also take the Crockett United States Heavyweight Championship belt. This one of the few that I had made out to me. I usually don't have them made out to me. Certain times I do, and I don't know why. I wish he didn't put the dragon here. I wish I could erase that. I hate the dragon, but nevertheless, a great shot of Ricky on the cover of the Wrestling Superstars, October of '79. Here is a horrible photo of Ricky Steamboat looking more like Charlie Chan when he was the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Champion. In May of 1981 on the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. You can see that he held almost every single title in the Mid-Atlantic Crockett area, including the World's Heavyweight Championship. And he finally captured the big gold from Ric Flair in '89. And here is his only PWI cover as the world champion. And it was long overdue for sure. We're going to take a look at a couple of photos of gorgeous Gino Hernandez, and here was his tag team partner when they were the dynamic duo. They were the Southwest Championship Wrestling tag team champions, and this was from the Texas. They were on the USA channel, and they were going by the World Tag Team Champions as well. And just a really rare shot of these two. Both of them combined would hold a hell of a lot of championships, Tully Blanchard and Gino. Gino's life was cut short. Some say murdered, some say drug overdose. Who knows the truth? Either way, it was a huge loss to professional wrestling. He could have been a great four horseman if he went to the Crockett territory. I know he was offered to go to the WWF as well, but loved Texas and wanted to stay in Texas. Something there kept him there. It's just too bad that he didn't have a further career. Great wrestler, great talent, great on the mic, easy to hate, and he had it all. While staying in the Texas area, he would move to the WCCW with the Von Erichs, and he would capture the Texas Heavyweight Championship. Here is a shot of Gino with the Texas Heavyweight title, and also is gentleman Chris Adams, and he is the American Heavyweight Champion Texas version. At this time, they were also the WCCW World Tag Team Champions as well. So this is another hard magazine to find. I couldn't believe how difficult. This is beat up, and I was looking for an upgraded version. I've been looking for a couple of years. You never see this magazine for sale. January of 1986. I mean, I don't look every single day, but whenever I looked for a better copy of it, it's never listed. Here is gentleman Chris Adams. Now he is the WCCW World Heavyweight Champion. They had went through a name change. They withdrew their affiliation with the NWA, and Fritz von Erich now declared his Texas State Heavyweight Champion a world title, and they're going by WCWA, World Class Wrestling Association World Heavyweight Champion. That's a mouthful. And gentleman Chris Adams is the champ. A lot of people hated Chris Adams. Chris Adams was a legit badass. He's a 4th degree black belt in judo. He's a 3-time national judo champion. That guy could put you to sleep quick. He didn't look like much. He didn't act like much. Deadly dude, without a doubt. Never gets talked about. Another guy whose life was snuffed out kind of short, but definitely a tough guy. Here is a look at, we were just talking about Vern Gagne a little while ago from 54, and the Sheik took over the territory, and he created he kept the lineage going of the United States Heavyweight Championship belt, and this is the newer version of that belt, which is actually the old version compared to what we're used to seeing the Sheik with. This is a body press program / magazine from '67, and the Sheik is defending the title against the mighty Igor. Here is a color version of that belt, and it's being held by Bobo Brazil, and this is the only shot of this belt that is on the cover of a magazine, February of 1972, with the Sheik's United States Heavyweight Championship belt. Here is another version of the Sheik's belt that most people haven't seen or known. It was part of his title lineage, and it's the style that came up next. It's got the map of the United States inside, that eagle. I'm not sure if you can see it with the glare. It kind of looks like the WWF belt, but that belt was not in circulation for very long, and that belt would change to the map of America, exactly like the Crockett U.S. Heavyweight Championship belt. Also, the IWA North American Heavyweight Championship belt was also copied from that. And this is the belt that we know the Sheik to be with. We were talking about Gino Hernandez a few minutes ago. Here was his first championship belt, and he won the Sheik's United States Heavyweight Championship belt. And here he is on the cover. A small picture, trying to get that so you don't get the glare there. This is your first shot of Gino on the cover of a magazine as the champion. It's the only time you see him with this belt as the champion. And this is a super rare, super expensive, hard to find body press magazine / program with Gino. Gino beat Don Kent for that in '77. He would hold it for a couple of short months before losing it back to the Sheik. Here is a color shot of Gino, rare shot of Gino with the belt in color, and just a great shot of a young and promising Gino Hernandez. Continuing on in the Sheik's U.S. title lineage, the Sheik would defend the title against Ox Baker, and Ox Baker would win the belt. This is the program to the night he won the belt, and here is Ox holding the belt up after winning the title from the Sheik. Ox Baker, very rare to see him with a belt. He's not on any magazine with any belt at all, and here he is with the Sheik's belt with his short run that he had. Here's Paul Jones on the cover of The Wrestler, February 1977, and it's very similar to the Sheik's United States U.S. belt, and it's the Crockett U.S. belt. He's also the World Tag Team Champion at the time, NWA Crockett World Tag Team Champion. That's what he's holding in his right hand. Paul Jones held a ton of titles. He's another guy that most of us who didn't have cable TV only know him from Worldwide Wrestling in '85 when cable took off and we got to see Paul as a manager. Paul was a freaking stud. The guy kicked some serious ass in the Mid-Atlantic. He held tons of belts. The guy was a legit badass, and nobody ever talks about Paul Jones. What a great wrestler and what a great career the guy had. Here's another one, Ric Flair with the NWA US Heavyweight Crockett Championship belt. Everybody looks at him with the 10 pounds of gold, or more so with the big gold. And before all that, in 1979, Flair was the U.S. champion. And this is the only cover with him as the U.S. champ. From that same match at the end of the night, here he is bloodied on another Best of the Wrestler in 81. And by this point, he had already lost it. These Best of the Wrestlers were just throwback old articles. And it's cool to see Flair with that belt, because it's a very rare look for him. And also Ricky Steamboat, as we showed in the magazine earlier, also held that belt. Here's just a rare picture of him and Bob Backlund. I'm really curious to see or find out where this was taken. I'm going to guess it was Backlund down in the South somewhere, wrestling. 78, 79 area. I just was just curious to see how those two hooked up on the same card. But a great shot. This is also the back cover of the very first Pro Wrestling Illustrated in 79. Jimmy Snuka is another wrestler who's never held that many belts, and certainly was never on any wrestling magazine covers as the champion. And here is Snuka on June of 1982 of Sports Review. And here is Snuka's only belt cover. He would also hold the tag team belts with Paul Orndorff. He would hold the tag team belts with Bam Bam Gordy. Snuka, he should have held the title in the WWF. He was more over than anyone ever in 1982, 83, and even as a heel, I mean, the guy was drawing fans left and right. That's a shame that he didn't have more championships. Also holding the Crockett Mid-Atlantic U.S. Championship belt is Chief Wahoo McDaniel, another guy who doesn't get talked about enough. He's held a ton of championship belts, ton of tag team belts throughout his career, former New York Jet. You notice the belt style now has changed to the black leather. Very cool looking belt with the United States map. This is a Mid-Atlantic wrestling magazine with Chief Wahoo on the cover. Sergeant Slaughter, when he was a heel, I believe he was a heel at this point, was also the United States heavyweight champion. And this is your only shot of the Sarge with this belt on the cover. And this belt would soon be changed out, and you wouldn't be seeing this style after this. So this is your last look at the Crockett US belt on a cover. And that was fall 82 Sports Review Annual. Talk about a belt. I mean, just look at this Magnum TA with the Mid-South heavyweight championship belt. I mean, it's as big as his chest and torso. I mean, this thing is enormous. The heavy burden of being North American champion, I think the heavy burden is carrying that thing. That is the biggest belt I've ever seen of any wrestler ever. Magnum TA, his name speaks for himself. He held championship belts everywhere he went. He was soon to be world heavyweight champion before getting injured in that car accident. Magnum TA, again, on the cover of June 1986 of the Main Event as the U.S. heavyweight champion. So the U.S. championship belt goes from this style with Sergeant Slaughter to one other style, which was really small and kind of like the Lex Luger belt we just looked at a little while ago, to this style, which they called the 10 pounds of silver. Never really liked this belt that much. Wahoo held it, Tully Blanchard held it, I believe Greg Valentine also held it. Magnum TA was the last to hold this style of the championship belt, and this belt would be changed to the style that everybody got to know and would stay this way for about 10 years or so. Here's a shot of Magnum when he was the second-time champion after beating Nikita Koloff for the U.S. belt in the Crockett 86-87 area time period. Here is wrestling news. We got Mr. Olympia and the Junkyard Dog. Junkyard Dog, another guy who hardly had any championship belts. It's a shame. The guy was beloved by millions. Well, he should have at least had a tag team championship belt in the WWF when he ran there. Was extremely popular with the fans, but never had the belt. We talked about this magazine in another video that I did, Dusty Rhodes, Andre the Giant, when they were the Mid-South United States Tag Team Champions. And this is on the cover of Wrestling News, 1979. Dusty Rhodes and Andre the Giant also held the Florida Tag Team Championship belts. And they held them very short. I think they held it for a good run, but after this, the belt disappeared for quite a few years, and then finally made a comeback later on in the mid-'80s or so. Here's a shot of Dusty Rhodes and our first look at the new NWA TV Championship belt, and it had the red leather. It would later change to the black leather. People were more familiar seeing Dusty with the big gold or with the 10 pounds of gold, and here's a shot of Dusty as the NWA TV champ. Here is Arn Anderson with that same belt. He's also pictured with Flair. I think only two people, Dusty and Arn, held the original red version. That was my favorite version of the belt, red, before it turned black. Tully Blanchard was also that champion, and he held, this is the black version. And here he is with his manager, J.J. Dillon. And here is Arn with the black version of the TV Championship belt, with Paul Lee as his manager when he was part of the Dangerous Alliance in the later part of the 80s and early 90s. The Great Muta would also hold that TV Championship belt. He would have some wars with Sting, and he would take the belt from Sting. And this is the first foreigner to hold the NWA TV Championship belt. Great Muta was, without a doubt, my favorite Japanese wrestler of all time. Still is. He's still wrestling today. He's still winning championships today at the age of, I believe, 62. Here is Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson. Arn is with the red TV belt. Tully is with the National Heavyweight Championship belt. Haven't seen Arn yet to get him to sign this one. I will later on at some point. One that I won't be getting signed would be with Nature Boy Buddy Landel. He was the national heavyweight champion. I met Buddy Landel at a show in Atlantic City. Shook hands with him. He hung out at the end of the matches, took pictures with everybody. He was a really nice guy, and it was shortly before he had passed away when he was wrestling on the independent circuit. He would have been great as the NWA champion. He says a few different times that he was going to be the NWA world champion. They were going to do a switch with Flair back in '85, and he screwed the whole thing up. He was cocky, he was arrogant, he was using drugs, he was drinking a lot of alcohol. He blames himself for the entire thing, and just was not dependable, reliable, and showing up late, and they weren't putting up with it. And he says, I did what I did, but I wish I didn't. So, you know, got to respect the guy who knows his faults, and he was a hell of a wrestler. I loved him. I thought it was a great act, imitating Flair. Just a great gimmick, and a great guy. Here's a rare looking title held by Big Ernie Ladd. It is the America's title, so it's a little bit different from the U.S. Championship belt. Ernie Ladd is the WWA Los Angeles NWA United America's champion. This belt would change several different times, several different versions. This is how it looked in '75. A few people held that, like John Tolos, Ric Flair. I'm sorry, not Ric Flair. Greg Valentine. Also. Well, so I'm trying to think who else held that. Victor Rivera. There's a few other people that held that. Unfortunately, they're not pictured with that belt. There's not too many people with this. Just a couple. So I yanked two of them off for here, and here's a shot of Greg Valentine with it, and as a nice bloody shot of him with the belt. Real close-up shot of that belt. I wish there was more champions with that version belt on the cover of a magazine, but there's not. I have a couple of programs that I showed in other videos, but they're enormous, and just for time restraint, I'm just trying to make it go a little quicker without having to open that up and show it. The other version of that America's belt, the Killer Kowalski held it, and it's a little bit smaller, and it's a little more form-fitted around the waist. And this was the Wrestler August of '72. Mil Mascaras also held that style of the America's belt, and he is on Inside Wrestling February of 1972. And another shot of Mascaras with the America's belt in March of '72. This is another style, the other version of it. This was the more popular version. It was around a little bit longer. A lot more guys held that. Terry Funk held that for a short time as well. Also, Rocky Johnson held that belt. One of the very few shots of Rocky Johnson with a championship belt. It's a shame. He's held several, but he's just not on any covers as the champion. Going back to the WWA Los Angeles area, the first champion would have been Carpentier. Carpentier lost the title to Freddie Blassie. Here's Freddie with that belt. Freddie would drop that title to Ricky Dozan. And in 1962, here's Ricky Dozan on the cover of Boxing Wrestling Monthly from Japan, and victorious at the end. He would lose the title back to Freddie Blassie. The title would go back and forth again to Carpentier, and then wind up with Crazy Luke Graham. Here is Crazy Luke's only cover of a program from Houston with the WWA World Belt. Pedro Morales would become one of the more popular WWA World Champions, and here's Pedro on the original promo, stamped on the back. I'm trying to see it from February 4th, 1966, and this was property of a library, and they held this in their historical sports section, and I was lucky enough to get the original promo of Pedro. Another style of the WWA belt was held by Dick the Bruiser. Dick the Bruiser would lose the belt to the Destroyer, and the Destroyer would continue on as the champion, but Dick the Bruiser didn't recognize his loss. He took the belt with him and formed his own WWA in Indianapolis, and that's how his company got started in the 60s. And here is a rare shot of him with the WWA Los Angeles belt before starting his own company. And here is the Destroyer with the belt after beating Dick the Bruiser. Here is the World Tag Team Champions, the Hacksaw Butch Reed, Teddy Long, the manager, and Ron Simmons. Rare shot of Butch Reed with a belt. The guy should have held a ton of more championship belts. The guy didn't hold many at all. He's not on any cover with any championship belt. I'm trying to get the shot in there of all of them together, but it's just not fitting in there. But you get the idea. The NWA World Tag Team Champions, Hacksaw Reed and Ron Simmons. Ron Simmons would also win the World's Heavyweight Championship. Too bad he just missed it as the NWA because the company went to WCW at this point. And here's Ron's first and only magazine cover as the World Heavyweight Champion. I also got Ron 8x10 signed, chiseled body, great look, great looking belt. Only a few people held this belt. Lex Luger would be the first to hold this style belt. Sting would hold this style belt as well. Vader would hold this belt, and it would be the last one to hold it would be Ric Flair, and this is Flair's only photo slash cover of a magazine with him with that belt. Very rare. It was only around for a couple of years, and then it was switched over again to the big gold belt. So it's pretty hard to find Flair with that belt. Here is a cover of Gong Weekly with Dan the Beast Severn, proudly showing the NWA World Heavyweight Championship belt, along with the UFC 5 Heavyweight Championship belt. Dan's probably the one champion who could destroy every single champion, past and present. Legit badass, legit fighter of not only MMA, but NHB meaning no holds barred. Dan was the champion when there was no rules. You go in, you couldn't bite, you couldn't eye gouge. That was it, bare knuckle, and you fought until the end. And not many guys can make that claim of being a world champion of a time period like that. Here's Dan at UFC 5, proudly holding up his new UFC championship belt, as well as the NWA championship belt. Dan would go on to say that he received more injuries winning the NWA belt than any no-holds-barred fight combined. He broke his ass harder, he trained harder, and he loved and respected the NWA and that belt at a time when everyone turned their back on the NWA and they went to the independents. And it's quite a shame what happened to the NWA, but Dan's still bringing some class and respect to the National Wrestling Alliance, and there it is in the octagon in the UFC. A rare champion, Kenta Kobashi, when he made a tour from Pro Wrestling Noah to the United States and awarded the belt by Harley Race. A rare picture of him on the cover as the NWA World Champion. There's a funny story with this, and I had just found this out not too long ago from one of our very good friends here on our YouTube channel. I haven't read this magazine since I was a kid. I haven't opened it up and never really bothered, because I have so many. I mean, how do I, just keep track of opening up ones? And this is the one I just kind of overlooked a lot. Always just assumed that this was Terry Funk with the NWA Championship belt when he was the champion. It's not. Terry had the belt custom made and came to New York and was walking around the streets of New York declaring himself the NWA World Champion, the only real world champion. And it's pretty funny inside. And the magazines are following him around the streets of New York. He's challenging Backlund, he's challenging Flair. And they're saying he completely lost his mind. That belt would somehow find its way in the hands of Southwest Championship Wrestling, Blanchard territory of Texas, when Southwest became a powerhouse on the USA channel. They decided to withdraw from the NWA, and they were going to make their own world heavyweight champion, and Adrian Adonis was their first world champion. Lou Thesz presented the champion with the belt in the center of the ring, and if you didn't look at it really closely and read it, you would think Adonis had won the NWA championship belt, but he didn't. Here is Masahiro Chono with the big gold belt, one of the last few NWA champions when it was still affiliated with the WCW. A lot of confusion happened. All that is explained in my NWA championship video that I made, but a rare shot of Chono with that belt. Chono would lose the title to the Great Muta. Great Muta was also the IWGP heavyweight champion at the time. This is a signed 8x10. I still find it hard to believe that Muta is not on a cover with the belt. I've been searching for years and I can't find one. I still believe there has to be. I am in search of one. Until then, I just have the signed 8x10. There has to be a photo with Chono. I'm sorry, of Muta with that belt. Muta would drop the title to Barry Windham, and Barry Windham would get the big gold NWA championship belt much too late in his career. The guy should have had it a hell of a lot sooner. He was on a small corner of a WCW magazine that I show in another video, but this just pops it out better, and I thought I would show the signed 8x10 of Barry with the belt. Barry would drop the title to Ric Flair at Bash at the Beach, I believe it was, or Beach Brawl, one of them stupid names. And Flair would take the title. When he did, the NWA withdrew. It was no longer going by NWA. It was going by the WCW International Heavyweight Championship. And here is Rick Rude when he won the belt against Flair. This is his only shot of him with the big gold on a cover. This is also signed by Vader, Sting, Dustin Rhodes, and the Nasty Boys. Rude would lose the title in Japan. The title would change really quickly. Hiroshi Hayes would be the champion for maybe a week or so. I never really cared for Hayes as a champion. There's no relation to Michael P.S. Hayes. It was, if you blinked, you missed it, and he happened to make it onto a cover of Pro Wrestling Weekly with the big gold. Kind of crazy. Johnny Powers was the champion of the NWF, and Powers was never on a cover with the NWF title. He was on a cover with the NWF North American title, but this title would go to Japan. He would defend it against Antonio Inoki. Antonio Inoki would win that match. I do have a ticket stub right here to that event from 1974. Inoki would take the belt. Here's Inoki's first belt cover as the NWF Heavyweight Champion, and this would be the symbolic World Heavyweight title for New Japan. Only a few people would hold this belt. Inoki would only lose it twice, once to Stan Hansen in 1982, and once to Tiger Jeet Singh, who was one hell of a heel in Japan. He's not very well known in the United States. He did wrestle a few times in the Sheik's territory, also in the WWA, Los Angeles NWA area. Here is a ticket stub, or here, of Inoki the night he won the title back from Tiger Jeet Singh, but a rare shot of Tiger with the New Japan Heavyweight Championship belt. Here's a photo of the Dynamite Kid when he was the WWF Junior Heavyweight Champion, Light Heavyweight Champion, I like to call it myself. I hate the word junior. This is before the British Bulldogs. Just a rare shot of Dynamite. And this is his death issue, covering his death in the magazines of Pro Wrestling Weekly. Another WWF Junior Heavyweight Champion, Tiger Mask. Here he is on the cover with Mil Mascaras and his brother Dos Caras. Here is the Four Horsemen with the gold, Wrestling 87, and this is signed by J.J. Dillon, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Lex Luger, and Ric Flair. They all have the gold except for Arn. Tully has the TV, Flair has the heavyweight world, and Luger has the U.S. The Four Horsemen would be back again on the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And December of 1988, Tully and Arn are the World Tag Team Champions. Barry is now the U.S. Champion, and Flair has the Heavyweight Championship. Tommy Rich, after we've seen him in his rookie magazine with Tojo Yamamoto as the Tag Team Champions, he would also become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Here is his only cover as the World Heavyweight Champion with the 10 pounds of gold. He was only champion for a very short time. He was also champions when he went by the Fabulous Ones, the Fargo's Fabulous Ones in the Memphis area with Eddie Gilbert, and they were the Southern Heavyweight Tag Team Champions. That's a rare shot of those two guys together as the champions. Ronnie Garvin beat Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight title. He was on a couple of magazine covers, but this is the only one that has a photo of him this big. Let's take a look at some of the ladies champions throughout the years. One of my favorites, who I loved to read about as a kid, who was very pretty in the 60s, was Miss Ann Casey. I became pretty good friends, I should say friends, I'd say how about pen pals with Ann Casey. I posted a couple of photos of her in the magazines from the 60s and had her son in the magazine, and she was thrilled to see these photos. She acted like I took these pictures. She's like, where did you get these? I haven't seen these. I've never seen these before. So I sent her a private message and became pretty friendly with her. Very nice lady, very cool lady. She went on to tell me a lot of cool stuff. She ended up sending me a free autograph for sending her all these photos through the internet, and she gave me the scoop on this championship belt. If you look really closely right here, there's a scar here. In 1975, Ann was a PI and bounty hunter, believe it or not, and she was shot 6 times with a 9mm. And this hole in her suit shows the scar of one of the 9mm shots that hit her in the stomach. And the guy was either a horrible shot or one tough chick, because to take 6 shots and keep coming is pretty damn impressive, especially right in the center of the gut there, like she did. This is Mildred Burke's original NWA US title belt, also worn by June Byers and the Fabulous Moolah. This is Ann beating Moolah for that belt in '75, and this is her backstage after winning the belt. And like I said, Ann was pretty cool and sent me a 8x10 because I sent her all these cool photos from her in the magazines and stuff that brought back a lot of memories to her. So may she rest in peace. She was a very friendly lady and very cool. And of course, we got Mildred Burke here, the first women's world champion. This is her first look in May of 1950 on the cover of a Midwest magazine. Here's Ann's first, I'm sorry, not Ann, Mildred's first magazine cover as world champion on June of 1953 of the NWA official magazine. I'm just looking at the time and I cannot believe it's 55 minutes already. Holy shit, I'm sorry. I gotta try to finish this up for you guys. Wrestling Review, a look at the very sexy Laura Del Rio when she was female United States heavyweight champion. She doesn't have a belt. I've never seen her on a cover with a belt, only a few times in the magazines, but I was able to get Penny Banner's autograph. Here she is in the AWA champion in 1963. Here is an original promotional photo of the fabulous Moolah when she was world heavyweight champion. This is a rare photo, hard to find in this good a shape. Very expensive, original 60s promo photo of the fabulous Moolah. Here's a shot of Wendy Rector, and she would be the first WWF female champion ever on the cover of a magazine besides a WWF magazine. This is October of '85. Moolah has been on plenty of magazines, not as the WWF champion. She was there as, was the NWA World's Women's Champion. Moolah sold the rights to Vince McMahon in '83, and she never was on any covers as the WWF champion, and the first woman to be featured back on a cover with a WWF championship belt was Wendy Rector. And it's only a corner side shot, but it's the first time the WWF's female champion is presented, and it's on the cover of Sports Review in October of '85. Beating Wendy Rector was probably my favorite of the ladies wrestlers, Leilani Kai. She held tons of belts all across the country, and always liked Leilani Kai. I always thought she was a great female wrestler and performer, and she would beat Wendy Rector, and she would be the third women's WWF champion. Here's Leilani Kai and Judy Martin when they were the NWA World Tag Team Ladies Champions. I show a photo of the two girls. Here's a rare pic of Misty Blue when she was the IWF champion. The IWF was a company, it started in the early 80s. It fizzled out. It had a lot of promise. It didn't stick around long. A lot of people passed through the door when they were kind of coming down from their careers. It was a company that didn't quite make it. Johnny Rodz, who was a hell of a guy, was the IWF World Heavyweight Champion. Here's a great shot of Johnny Rodz. I met Johnny a bunch of times when I used to box down at the Gleason's Gym in New York City. Rodz teaches pro wrestling there. He's always in the gym. He's always meeting fans, shaking hands, signing autographs. Just a super guy. I haven't been down there in years. I'm sure he's still doing his thing. We're going to take a look at some champions versus champions. And let's take a look. We got Antonio Inoki versus Bob Backlund. At this particular point, they are tag team partners in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And the mid to upper 70s, they were tag teaming up together, the two champions, NWF and the WWF. Antonio would then challenge Backlund for the World WWF title. And here is Inoki as the heavyweight champion on the cover of a magazine. I also have a poster here in a magazine. I'll show you quick of Inoki in this issue of Gong. And here he is posted with a free poster with Backlund's WWF belt. The magazines did not acknowledge this at all in America. It was very, very hush-hush. The only magazine that did cover it was an underground magazine that always got the scoop and great stories that some of the other magazines didn't cover, and that was Wrestlin' Wonders. Wrestlin' Wonders, like I said, was an underground magazine. Their photographer was on hand that night. They've got exclusive photos of Inoki and Backlund during the match. Inoki winning the belt. The full story is in this issue of Wrestling Wonders. Spelled R-A-S-S-L-I-N, Wrestling. And if you look up any of these on eBay, they sell for a lot of money. This one's damn near impossible to find, but it's got the full story of the title change. That the WWF till today, I believe, still doesn't recognize it. This is the match that almost happened but didn't. Lou Thesz versus Bruno Sammartino, WWF versus the NWA. Several different stories on why the match didn't happen, but nonetheless, it didn't happen. Dragon Fujinami took on Ric Flair for the NWA versus IWGP in the Tokyo Dome, and in 1991, Dragon Fujinami pinned Ric Flair in the center of the ring and won the heavyweight championship belt, as well as the same as the IWGP belt at the same time. And here is the front cover of Fujinami with the belt. He's also on an American magazine magazine cover with that belt, but it's a real small corner shot. It was huge news in Japan. Remember when I said that Von Erich withdrew from the NWA and started his own WCWA World Heavyweight Champion, and Kerry Von Erich would take that title, and Kerry would lose that belt to Dragon Fujinami in a title versus title in Japan. And here's a super rare shot of Fujinami winning the WCCW or WCWA World Heavyweight Champion from Kerry Von Erich. He held it for a short time before Kerry won it back, and then Kerry, of course, dropped it to Jerry Lawler at Super Clash 3. Here would be your first title versus title, the JWA Ricky Dozan champion and the NWA Lou Thesz world champion. This is where they established the NWA in Japan. 1957, it would have the match. Ricky Dozan would pin Lou Thesz, and the NWA is now affiliated in Japan. My newest piece to my collection that is sealed in hard plastic is a program to that event. I was very, very lucky to have pulled that program off for time restraints. I'll show more about that in another video because this is going pretty long, guys, so I wonder if you're all still with me or not. Lou Thesz's belt, as we just showed a little while ago, would come back to life in Japan for the UWF. UWF was a shoot-style wrestling company, very hard, very physical. They did a lot of striking, a lot of martial arts mixed in with pro wrestling. Their first champion of the UWF, or UWFI, I should say, was Nagihibu Takada. The winner of the championship would get Lou Thesz's old belt, and here is Takada with the belt. He challenged a ton of people. A ton of people challenged him for that belt. Bob Backlund would be one of them. Backlund and Takada beat the shit out of each other, both bloodied up. Hard physical match. Kind of felt sorry for Backlund at this point. This was in 88 or 89, 90, somewhere around there. Backlund was, out of his prime, but still competing, and it was a hard fought battle. Van Vader, Big Van Vader, would also hold that championship belt. He would beat Takada for the title. Here is Vader's shot of the championship belt, and you can see Lou Thesz in the background here that just presented him with the belt. Fujinami, when he beat Flair at a title versus title, it was going to be Vader versus Flair, title versus title, but Vader had lost the title to Fujinami. At this point, here is Vader's only magazine cover with the IWGP, as well as the CWA, which was the Catch Wrestling Association Heavyweight Championship. This was the only belt he ever had around his waist. He beat the great Otto Vans for the championship in Australia. And even anyone who's seen Otto knows he's as wide as he is tall. He was real heavy like Vader, and the belt fit around him, so Vader was able to wear a belt. This is like one of the few belts he ever had went around his waist. The WCW belt didn't fit, the IWGP belt didn't fit, but here's a rare look at Vader with the CWA Catch Wrestling Championship belt. Good looking belt there. A lot of people don't know the original UWF, not the UWFI that Takada was champion of. Maeda was the champion of the original UWF in 1984, and this was affiliated with the World Wrestling Federation, and The championship belt right here, you're not going to be able to see it, but it says WWF right there. WWF International UWF Heavyweight Champion. This was the first champion, a really rare shot of him on the cover of a magazine with the WWF UWF Heavyweight Championship belt. This version of the UWF would go from 84 to about 88. And then it would resurface again under UWFI under a different owner and commissioner in the 1990 range, 89-90 range, when Takada was champion. Here is a rare shot of the WWF International Tag Team Champions. We got Kimura and Fujinami. Fujinami was everywhere at this point. He held everything. WWF Junior Heavyweight Champion, NWA Junior Heavyweight Champion. The guy had it all. They wrestled Adonis and Murdoch when Adonis and Murdoch were the WWF Tag Team Champions in Japan in '85. The winner of that match would become the first WWF International Champions, and Kimura and Fujinami were the first two, and this is the only shot of those two on the cover as champion. Here is a huge program from the UWF. Versus IWGP. The great Muda would take on Takada, who we just seen in the magazine a few minutes ago, and a title versus title. I'm just going to show you the inside. This thing is enormous. Here's Muda when he went by KG Muto at that time period, which means he took the makeup off and he was a good guy. And here is Takada with that belt. Great shot. Too bad I can't fit the whole thing in. Here's just another great shot of this. Another one here of Takada with the belt from Luthez. What a program. I mean, this program is double the size of a magazine. It is enormous. The title versus title, Takada would take that belt and he would become the IWGP and the UWF Heavyweight Champion at the same time. This is the first title versus title the IWGP would lose. Rick Martel would be the AWA World Heavyweight Champion in '85. He would have a title versus title with Ric Flair in Japan. And here is a magazine cover with both champions on the cover. Also, Flair would take on Bob Backlund in Atlanta back in '82 when they were the world, when Backlund was the world champion and Flair the world champion, and also Gordon Solie on the cover of that. Here is the original Super Bowl of wrestling, NWA WWF Superstar Graham versus Harley Race. This is a great shot of the two champions on the cover. Here is Superstar Graham and Harley Race. Again, another promotional shot before the actual match. What a great looking cover, having these two on the cover front and center with the belt so close up. What a great look. Backlund would also take on Harley Race, and another huge magazine with these two. I'm trying to fit the whole thing in here so I don't have to pull it back and ruin the camera angle. Backlund would face Harley twice. His first WWF title defense was against Harley in '78, and this is at Madison Square Garden for their second title versus title match. Let's take a look at Road Warrior Hawk. When Road Warrior Animal was out and injured, and Hawk went on to continue on without him and went to Japan and formed the Hellraisers with the Power Warrior. Here's Hawk and Power as the Hellraisers when they won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship belts, and they beat Hercules Hernandez and Scotty Norton for those titles. Here's a shot at the Destroyer with the United States Heavyweight Championship belt that was only defended in All Japan for the Giant Baba. A nice rare shot of him with the belt. Here's the color photo, a little bit closer up shot of the Destroyer. I love this autograph that I got from the Destroyer. Great shot of him with the belt. Here is Jumbo Tsuruta. Title versus title. It was Nick Bockwinkel, AWA champion, Jumbo Tsuruta, NWA International Heavyweight champion, and Jumbo would take the title from Bockwinkel in Japan. And here is one of maybe two magazine covers with Jumbo on the cover. Rare shot of Barry Windham with the short-lived NWA Western States Heritage Championship belt. Larry Zbyszko would go on to be the next champion after Barry. Here is a rare shot of Curt Hennig with his first World Heavyweight Championship, the AWA. He defeated Nick Bockwinkel for that belt. This is Sports Review, April '88. Next few magazines are going to be a couple of magazines with just all three champions, AWA, NWA, and WWF, all appearing together on a cover. Winter '77, we got Superstar Graham, Harley Race, and Nick Bockwinkel. The new champion now, Bob Backlund, Nick Bockwinkel, and Harley Race. Bob Backlund, Nick Bockwinkel, and Dusty Rhodes. Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Stan Hansen now. What a threesome that is for the champions in the 80s. Getting towards the end, guys. Thanks for sticking with me for so long. There's just a lot of information to cover here. Here's Mil Mascaras, and a lot of people don't know what belt this is. This is the All-World Heavyweight Mexican Championship belt. All ALLL, 3 L's. This is a rare shot of Mil with this belt on PWI, his only cover of PWI with his championship belt, and it is the All-World Heavyweight Mexican Championship. Next couple are a couple of Lucha issues, and I can try to pull it a little bit closer so you can see here. Here's a rare shot of Dr. Wagner in 1974 with the Mexican Light Heavyweight Championship belt on the cover of Lucha Libre. Here is a shot of the Blue Demon in 1972 with the Mexican National Heavyweight Championship belt. There's a cool look at that Mexican looking title. And finally, to round out the entire video, we've got the UWA, Universal Wrestling Association, newly crowned heavyweight champion, August 1977. El Canek defeated Lou Thez for the title. That's right, Lou Thez was the first UWA Mexican heavyweight champion. He defeated El Canek. El Canek would be most known for this championship belt. He'd hold it more than anyone else. And August of 1977 with El Canek. All right, guys, thank you for sticking with me for this longest marathon video. Believe me, this was a lot longer before. I had to cut it in half because there was just too much. And I just wanted to give you something big, show you guys all the different champions out there, of different champions maybe you've never seen before, or champions you never knew actually held that belt, or didn't know what territory they may have been from. Hopefully you've seen something new, maybe learned something new. And, you know, once again, thanks for making 50 videos possible. You guys are awesome. And looking forward, man, because we're just getting started. We got a lot more subjects to come. Look to see possibly next week doing a video on the Von Erichs. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next.